I was told I had 6 months to live, an 8% chance of survival, and I was told to make memories and drink Gatorade.
That sounds like a Gatorade commercial.
Yeah. Social workers were like, "Are you afraid to die? Like, let's talk about dying." And as I got to the 10 years, I realized the question they should have been asking me was if I was afraid of living, because I think living with it was so much harder to comprehend than like the death aspect of it really ever was for me.
That's such a profound thought, you flipping that question.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have this whole experience that just completely flips your life upside down, and it's being able to live knowing this.
Yeah. The only thing scarier than going for my dreams was the idea that I wouldn't have the chance to do it at all.
Grace, thanks for being here. I guess we'll get started. I was fascinated in your story beyond the inspiration that if people may not know who you are, I'm sure some of the audience is going to know who you are, but, I'm excited to dive into your story and what you're doing from your story. So if there's a top that you would like to start off to tell people who you are, I would love for you to do that.
Yeah, I feel like it needs a little backstory.
A little bit.
But for people who don't know me, when I was 13 years old, I started getting really sick and tired. And I went to dozens of doctors. They told me I was depressed. I was just a teenager. I was making it up to get out of gym class. I heard everything you could possibly hear, but no one would actually do any tests. And my mom, who knows me better than anyone else, was like, no, there's something wrong with this kid. I couldn't make it through a dance class. I was constantly calling to get picked up from school in the middle of the day. And one day she was like, okay, we are figuring this out today. So she took me to the urgent care and was like, we're not leaving until someone does something. So they took blood and they found out that my red and white blood cell count was very far off, which is a marker for leukemia. I was transferred to the Minneapolis Children's Hospital, where I was put into the hematology and oncology department. And I was told that I did not have leukemia, but I had to figure out why I had all of these markers for leukemia. That started another 6-month-long journey. And then on January 9th of 2015, they did an MRI of my spine and my skull, and they found out that I had a brain tumor. I had a brainstem glioma, which is a tumor in the pons of the brain, which is basically right at the top of your spinal cord. I was told that the tumor was inoperable and that chemotherapy and radiation had a very slim chance of working because of the blood-brain barrier. And basically there was nowhere on earth that was going to be able to help me. And I was sent home. I was told I had 6 months to live, an 8% chance of survival. And I was told to make memories and drink Gatorade.
That sounds like a Gatorade commercial.
Gatorade commercial. I was passing out multiple times a day at that point. And so, Gatorade was the only thing that could spike my blood sugar enough to get out of bed. And I was put on what a lot of people call the dreaded wait and watch protocol, where my entire medical treatment is going home and waiting and then coming in and getting a scan and then going home and waiting again. And even if your scan changes, there's nothing that changes to your treatment protocol. So I went home that day. They took off my hospital wristband, and the day they found the tumor was the day I actually went home. And we got in the car and my mom's like, I just have to go back in for 1 second. And she went back and she's like, did you just say that my daughter has a brain tumor and now we're going home? And they're like, yes, just go home and rest. And we went home that day and sat in front of the television all night long. And that started a 6-month crazy journey. And those 6 months have now been 10 years.
See, that's the interesting part, that the 6 months has been 10 years. But before we continue on to how that's prolonged, remind me, or the audience, if you said it already, how old are you at this time when you found out?
I was diagnosed at 13.
13. And so when you went home that day, was your only thought, I'm going to die?
I would love to tell you exactly what I was thinking, but I unfortunately don't remember too much of that time. Pretty much those whole 6 months are a little bit blurry to me. But we knew we had to do something. I think we were in shock for a while. And then my mom is her saying was always, you can be sad, but you can't be sad for too long. But yeah, no, it was definitely something that all of a sudden was at the forefront of my mind, because I had social workers sitting me down and, I wasn't receiving medical treatment. So they were trying to put me through mental treatment. And they're these social workers are sitting me down and being like, are you afraid to die? Let's talk about dying. And my mom's like, she is 13. Stop talking to her like that. Don't talk to her like that. And now, 10 years later, looking back at it, that question has been a big mental thing that I've been kind of processing recently about what they ask kids when they're going through something like this.
So how does it work now in regards to them giving you a 6-month timeline, and now it's been 10 years and you're here?
I mean, doctors can't tell me why. You really do, I'm constantly grappling with this word lucky. It's just back and forth. Do I feel lucky? Do I not? But yeah, no one can tell me why. There's a handful of us. most of my friends have passed away who were diagnosed at the same time as me. There's maybe like 2 or 3 of us that I know of. But they don't know. We don't know what causes brain tumors. We don't know how to cure brain tumors. Like, we don't know anything about brain tumors, really. A lot of guessing is involved. And so they're looking at a screen. They're seeing, like a third of her pons of her brain that controls her heart and her lungs is taken over by this tumor. And we can't do anything about it. So the second that thing starts growing, like, her heart's going to stop and her lungs are going to stop. And so they're just making their best guess they can based on what they see. They don't know how it's acted before they discovered it. They don't know how long it was there. So it's totally just a guessing game. And then, sometimes the tumors just don't grow. And I can't tell you why mine hasn't. And a lot of my friends did, unfortunately.
So what is that balancing act for you of not knowing and having to continue your life with that in the back of your mind, without a lack of better terms of saying it?
Yeah, I think that's like my 10-year conversation has been something that's been really big for me recently, because in the cancer world, there's this idea that, like, when you get to 10 years cancer free, you're kind of like out of the clear. And I still had my tumor, so I was trying to like grasp onto something that was like, okay, like, what can my benchmark be, even if this tumor is still here? And so 10 years was what me and my family kind of set. And so it was like, we just have to make it to 10 years. We just have to make it to 10 years. And I really expected some relief or distance from it when I got there. And as I got closer to the 10 years this past January, I realized that I wasn't finding that relief that I expected to find. And that came with the realization that I am in the exact same place health-wise as I was 10 years ago. And I'm still living with this like ticking time bomb in my head that could go off at any second. And so now I think my new goal in life is trying to figure out how I can live not forgetting that I still have this thing in my head that could change at any moment, but then also not letting that hold me back at all. So it's definitely like a mental gymnastics that I've been really processing the past like month or two, because I was just constantly like in fight or flight mode, like get to 10 years, get to 10 years. And then it's like, oh, my next goal is to live the rest of my life with this tumor, which is a lot scarier than getting to 10 years, because it's kind of like an indefinite number of days.
So how has that shifted your life in regards to existing and living your life? Is there that inspirational push, or is it driven by fear or gratefulness? Like, what's boiling up inside of you?
Well, I think the word fear comes up a lot. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, you're so brave for like doing all of these things, or you must just not have any fear to just like go out and try everything that you want to try. And I was like, I don't think it's a lack of fear. It's just that the only thing scarier than going for my dreams was the idea that I wouldn't have the chance to do it at all. And that to me was like the biggest thing. Like, it's not that I'm not afraid to like get up on stage and talk in front of people or to audition back in the day or do whatever I was doing. It's that if I didn't try then, I didn't know if I would ever have the chance to. And I think that even 10 years later is how I live my life every single day, for good and bad. It pushes me probably to do things a lot quicker than and I'm learning now to try to slow down. But definitely, I would say the biggest thing it's impacted is my relationship with time. It's like this weird back and forth where I feel like I have a lot of it and I feel very grateful for the time I have, but then I also feel like I have none of it. And so, yeah, it's definitely changed my perspective on a lot of things. And so anything that is scary, it's like this reminder just to like do it anyways.
Yeah, and this is the part of the metaphor for me that I find it so interesting, and is because you keep explaining it as a ticking time bomb in many ways, but I also feel like even for me that doesn't have a tumor in my brain, sometimes I feel like life is a ticking time bomb in many ways, because you don't know when that the metaphorical bomb's gonna go off with or without a tumor. Like even though you don't know. Hopefully, again, nothing happens, but like you have that idea that it could go off, but it's kind of the same in regards to we don't know our timeline either.
Yeah.
Even though I don't have an illness, this, that, and the other. Like, I have no idea.
That's what I'm like, you could walk out and get hit by a bus tomorrow. Like, that's always what it's morbid as it sounds.
Yeah, your sense of urgency is just so in your face, and way more dramatic in a sense that you have this in you, so it's a totally different experience. I'm not comparing either of them, but that facing of time and not knowing how much time you have left, that's applicable for everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's completely right. Like, I try to use what I've been through as an example, even for myself, but for other people as well. Like you said, you don't know how long any of us have, and we've learned that over and over, and I've watched that in this community over and over, and so it becomes a big piece of my decision making in my life, whether I want it to be or not. And I think even when I'm thinking about things completely separate of the brain tumor, I've just become so conscious of the fact that we only have a limited amount of time that I don't feel like I have time to sit around and not do things that I want to try, you know?
And what's the relationship with you and your family in regards to this whole process? I'm sure it's evolved, but what's the dialogue like with that?
Yeah, so it's just me and my mom. And when I was diagnosed, she was like, okay, let's just like make these 6 months as amazing as we possibly can. So I moved to LA with her. We rented an apartment over the phone and came out to LA on the weekends. And I was like, I just want to be in entertainment and work in movies. And she was like, I'm from a farm in South Dakota. Like, I don't know how to do this. And so our motto was always like, every day is an adventure. And we would just try to figure out like one thing a day. We would walk somewhere new. Or she was just amazing. She would walk with me like, we would walk like 8 miles to acting classes in Hollywood because I don't think Uber existed at the time when we came out here. And she was just like, let's just try and experiment every single day. And I think that combination mindset of, adventure and then also this thing that pushed us made us feel like we could try or accomplish anything. And I think I got really lucky because I had something I was passionate about. And so I was running towards something instead of running from something. So yeah, it was incredible at the time to have her be supportive in that way. 10 years later, she's still equally as supportive. But yeah, no, I think it's a big conversation for all of us, kind of like, okay, if this is going to be the rest of my life in this way, kind of what pieces of it are we going to decide to leave behind and try to release that stress that we've been holding for such a long time. So I think family and friends, we're all kind of going through the same, like, what are we going to decide to like let go now emotionally? Because it's hard to carry it around, I think, and for 10 years. And we've started realizing that recently.
Yeah, so I wonder if it went from a carrying to now just an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
So is that kind of been part of the transitionary period of how you embrace it?
Yeah. I think trying to put those emotions like that, I'm trying to like put that survival mode in the past.
Right.
And not that things, like I said earlier, like I still have the exact same tumor I had 10 years ago, but you can't live like that forever. It's like those 6 months you can live like that. You can be as manic and crazy and fly all over the world as you want to, but like eventually that's going to, eventually the electric bill has to be paid, So I think that's where we're trying to like, and I think that will forever be my life. And I think that's a lot of people who have been through any kind of like life-changing moment. It's like, how can I not forget what I've been through and, keep it with me and carry it into the future, but then not let it be all consuming forever.
Yeah. And what you said earlier really struck a chord with me, what your mom said to you about you can be sad for a little while, but you can't be sad forever. And, I see that with a lot of people, and the topic that I discuss, it's this feeling like I'm going to be sad forever. And it's not that the sadness completely goes away. I think, the sadness can sprout up, and that's okay too. I mean, life is being sad throughout the rest of our life. But I think it's about how you carry that sadness and make sure it doesn't take over you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very profound thing for her to say so early on. And was that a big portion of your mentality as well? About like that kind of, like, I think you just explained it, and I'm trying to explain it in a terrible way, but it's not forgetting what it is, in this case, the tumor, but it's not letting it consume you.
Yes, absolutely. And she knew, because during those 6 months I was very sick, a lot of this was learning how to manage the symptoms and the side effects that I was having that weren't treatable. And so, I was in bed for a long time, and she was, she did it like in words, but she also did it physically as well. She would fill the room with sit down activities. Like she gave me a guitar, and she got me like a sewing machine, and like she tried to make me crochet. That didn't last very long, but like she fostered an environment that echoed what she said. Her saying, you can't be sad for too long, you can be sad, but you can't be sad for too long. Then I was able to pick up those things and be creative in a space where usually sadness would have been the emotion. Like laying in bed sick, most people are going to be sad, but I was learning how to play guitar in a hospital room.
So as part of that process of getting through it, motion, in a sense of staying active in many ways, wherever that activity may be, and it could come in many different forms. And the examples you just gave, and there's a good comparison there. I feel like if people get in these places, again, not with your exact experience, with comparatively, It's just the idea of just, I think when people stay stagnant, it's just idle moments that are the most dangerous.
Yeah.
And if you just sit there, that's when you're just sitting in it and not
Mhm.
doing anything, which I think is a place okay to be at for a little bit.
Yeah.
In your case, you have physical ailments.
Yeah.
But then there's people that go through some experiences that just don't get up and do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of parlays with the idea of you can be sad for a little bit, but you can't be sad forever.
Yeah.
But I think you will be sad forever
Yeah.
if you're not trying to do something about it.
Yeah, and I think, I was 13, so I think it was hard to, like, comprehend a lot of that, and especially, like, an adult trying to help a child through that too, but
Right.
I think she fostered environments that helped ignore the sad a little bit, because in this case, there was nothing they could do. Like, so ignoring the sad was all we had to do, or I guess, not overindulging the sad. So, like, I was in middle school at the time, and, the school was, like, praying for me and, like, all of these things, and I would show up to school and kids would be, like, crying, and she's like, "She's not doing this anymore. Like, you guys are like, no, 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 no." Like, she doesn't need to be cried over in the hallway, or, like, they were like, "Oh, well, you can, like, stay in the hospital for observation for a while, but we can't do anything." And she's like, "Why would we stay in the hospital if you guys aren't doing anything? Like, this is just a sick environment." And so, when we realized that, so it ended up being, like, the best kind of, like, year of my life, because I was doing everything I could possibly dream of doing. And so there wasn't much, of course, there's obviously probably a lot of mental turmoil that I don't remember, but there was a lot of joy in that year for sure.
I'm sure. And I wonder how much that has changed in regards to, okay, that year when you thought your time was potentially going to be cut short, and now 10 years later.
Yeah.
So was that a whole whirlwind of a operation to get through in regards to, wait, I'm still going and my life is continuing. So is that a different mindset?
I think it's just so day by day for me that I didn't comprehend any of that until, like I said, very recently, the 10 years was like an actual benchmark where I had to start facing it.
Yeah.
But no, it was like, okay, let's just get to the 6-month scan. And then 6 months, they're like, okay, you're good. Let's do it again in 3 months. And then you just live every single day and you get through it each day. And so I don't think in the middle of it, I was necessarily having those thoughts.
You're just a kid.
I was just a kid. And so I think that's like that back and forth was kind of like I was talking about earlier, like the social workers were like, "Are you afraid to die? Like, let's talk about dying." And as I got to the 10 years, I realized that the question, I said this on my Instagram, was like, the question they should have been asking me was if I was afraid of living and living within this context and what it meant for the rest of whatever my life was. Because I think living with it was so much harder to comprehend than like the death aspect of it really ever was for me.
Yeah, that's such a profound thought. For you flipping that question, because it's like, you have this whole experience that just completely flips your life upside down, and it's being able to live knowing this.
Yeah.
And that's like the biggest adjustment. Whenever we get smacked in the face with certain aspects of life, whatever it may be, it's like we forget about the idea of having to live with something that has happened to us.
Yeah.
And it's such an inspirational story to know that you have that. And how have you seen your experience? And I want to get into the work you're doing as well to talk about the bigger picture avenue outside of yourself, because that seems to be such a big part of your work, which is incredible. But how have you seen what you going through your own experience, as if, like Heavy Lies the Cross, like you're going through this, but it has such an impact on other people. Have you seen it affect the way the people around you have lived their life? Because again, it's almost like you have as weird as this is to say, partially like a superpower in you, because you have this window within yourself to see the world differently and take it day by day and go after the things you're having, when so many people are so fearful, even myself in many ways, fearful of going after what I want. But when you feel like you have a limited time, it forces you to be courageous in a way. Not limited of the fear, like you said. The fear is always there, but that's why it's courage, and courage is separate of fear. You do things courageously with holding on to fear. How have you seen the way you lived your life affect other people?
I think in like my immediate friends and family, it's definitely affected all of them, because I think also the awareness that you might lose somebody in your family, your story too, I think you gain that same perspective, whether you're the one going through it or not. And I think, funnily enough, I've accidentally kind of created a group of friends that have experienced it in some way or another. Like I have a lot of chronically ill friends. I have one friend that like has CF and one that has gastroparesis. And like, I think I've just gravitated towards the type of people that have that understanding. I, was in middle school when I was diagnosed. And so high school, I was homeschooled, but even just getting along with people my age was a really hard thing for me, because, the biggest thing in their life was like their math test. And I'm not trying to make those issues seem smaller. It was just like, because that is the hardest thing in their life right now. And you can't compare people's lives. And so that's like constantly something I'm trying to remember too. But my problems were just very different from their problems. And so I just think I gravitated towards people in my life that had experienced something similar to me. But I think on a broader scale, like I hope that my story is an example that when something happens where your life changes or you're kind of stripped down to ground zero, you can rebuild it in a way that kind of makes you the person you should have always been. And I think brain tumors are an extreme example, but that can come from a family death, a divorce, something you like not getting into the college that you always thought you were going to go to. And I think hopefully that people can like take my story and turn it into whatever they're currently facing when their life kind of comes to a point that they didn't expect.
And that's why it's so beautiful. Again, almost every conversation that I have, and that's what I've tried to implore with these, why I like speaking to people like you. And again, it's funny that you say, who the people that you bonded with, because I had a podcast with Kat Tim once, and she asked me, she's like, do you have a hard time connecting with people that haven't been through some shit? And I was like, like I'm pretty nice with everyone for the most part. Like I'll make it work. But yeah, I noticed a lot of the people I hang out with, they've all, the people that I'm closest with, for the most part, have gone through some shit. And it's because you just see life in a different lens. And even within that lens, you still see things differently. But there's a camaraderie of just seeing life different. And and applying your story, I just see so many, it's like almost, your story is like an X variable, and people can fill in X with their personal life. And it's not putting experiences on a totem pole of which is higher or lower. It's just, it's this mentality, it's this perspective that can be applied throughout the masses in many ways.
Yeah.
You might not have a brain tumor, but like exchange that brain tumor for whatever it is, for someone you lost, whatever you're going through, higher or lower up the scales, doesn't matter. But that shift that you've had to go through and you've been forcefully having to live life differently is just applicable to so many different people in the way they're living. That's why it's so inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Thanks.
And so tell me about your work now, like how you're applying your experiences to make a difference for other people.
Yeah, so when I was 15, I publicly spoke about my story for the first time. I gave a TED Talk in Chicago, and afterwards I had a lot of members of the audience who, from looking at them, you wouldn't know had been through something similar to me, whether it was a family member or themselves. And I realized that people, whether it's a brain tumor or something similar, they're all around and you don't know unless you talk to them. And I was like, okay, well, if I share my story first, it opens up a lot of other people also sharing. And I was like, if it's that simple, then I think I'm going to do it. I was also 15, so I probably just like to talk a lot. But I started speaking publicly about my story. And then I was 16. I collected a bunch of stories from different brain tumor survivors and put it into a book that we started handing out to newly diagnosed patients, just about the brain tumor experience from a bunch of different kids. And I realized that stories really did have the ability to change the world. And so I got invited to Washington, D.C. and started working in cancer legislation and pediatric healthcare legislation and advocating on Capitol Hill and with the White House for not only increased funds, but increased awareness about these diseases. A lot of people don't know that, pediatric brain cancer is severely underfunded, and a lot of these trials are being paid for by parents of these patients. And it's not uncommon that I see a post on Facebook that's like, hey, we need to find $1 million this week if everyone can come together, or this trial is going to be shut down with 17 kids in it. It's just kind of the reality. We are living in the middle of history right now in the brain cancer community. When I was diagnosed, I was told there was absolutely nothing for my type of tumor. And now 10 years later, we're actually starting to see a spark of hope and actually seeing advancements for the very first time. So we need help, not only from the government, but from citizens as well, to put this problem at the forefront of lawmakers, because, even just recently, there was a lot of bills that we really worked on that were getting passed and then got defunded, the same day. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I think, yes, money is important and lawmaking money is important, but awareness is really where we're at, because a lot of people just don't know about this problem until it's affected them personally. And, we saw this big push behind leukemia back in the day and breast cancer. And, now they have very high success rates. And brain tumors are arguably like one of the worst types of cancer to have. So if we can solve that, we can solve pretty much everything else.
don't know if you want this. This is really far from you.
Thank
If you
you.
want that drink, for anyone watching, the drink was so far. I was like, maybe she wants a sip. So is there a heavy correlation? Is this the main correlation is just with the lack of funding? So it's just a research problem in regards to not having more direct answers? Is that like is that the biggest hurdle? Besides the difficulty, I'm sure, of just finding more resources?
I mean, it's not a lack of ideas. There's a lot of ideas and there's a lot of incredible trials that are actually working. We have CAR-T that's doing really well. We have ONC201, which is a drug that's been showing amazing progress. It's like 4% of government funding for cancer goes to children. And then like a tiny percent of that 4% goes to brain tumors. And so I think it's really just like prioritizing children, which have not been prioritized because they're kind of, we're often told that we're rare, but we're not rare when we're standing in a room full of thousands of people. And so I think, it's based on these numbers, but sometimes it shouldn't be a numbers problem. Because when you're looking at it, it's like, yes, of course, like a percentage of the population is facing, like, of course, 90 and plus is facing a large increase of cancer. Like, obviously, they're elderly people. But when you count the amount, we started as a community, we started counting years lost instead of age. And when you count years lost, it's like by far pediatric cancer is, the biggest of the bunch.
Oh, right. Yeah. If they have way more life to live.
Yeah.
I guess it's more of a staggering way to look at it.
Yeah.
Interesting. That is a very powerful way just to flip the script on because numbers do get lost and all of a sudden people become a stat, this, that, and the other. But you just simply change the viewpoint of those numbers and it makes such a big difference.
They're looking at number of patients instead of, years of lives lost, which I think is very different.
Yeah, not to say a 90-year-old should just kick the can, but children, come on.
I think, as cliche as it sounds, like children are the future and like you don't know what these kids are going to grow up and do. And I just think it hasn't been a priority. And we've seen what can be done if it is a priority. And families cannot keep funding these trials that their own children are in. It's like family foundations funding their own treatment. And a lot of people don't know, like when you're diagnosed, a family is tasked with finding their own trials, which also makes no sense to me. Like, so I think it's like, it's not a lack of ideas. It's like restructuring the healthcare system to prioritize the people that are most vulnerable and don't really have a voice of their own.
That makes sense. How much of that teetering or the seesaw of, there's the clinical aspect and the medical background, and then there's also the emotional side of just children getting through this. Is there any support in that aspect?
I think that's like where we have an opportunity to use awareness. I think, like I said before, like leukemia, there was like a big social push behind it. And then it increased like government funding for it too. So I think like we really focus on awareness too. There's a piece of legislation that we've been working on that specifically like designates a day in May as DIPG Brain Cancer Awareness Day, which is a tumor in the pons. Because we think if, there's an awareness aspect, then like corporate companies are going to want to be involved. And it's kind of just like one of those illnesses that it's like the epitome of like an illness. Like people don't want to talk about children with brain cancer. And so I think if we can find that balance of, people who haven't been through this wanting to be aware and be involved, that's really incredible. And then I think that pushes lawmakers and corporate companies to want to be a part of it too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In regards to my own journey with this podcast is obviously like a lot of people that gravitate towards this show, have gone through it. And then part of my mission since the inception was like, I really want to just get these stories out there to people that haven't gone through it.
Yeah.
And so I see that angle of awareness where it just have a ripple effect. And then the power of story, like you said, that helps with the people that are going through it. I feel like a lot of it is probably so isolating feeling like you're alone with this, and combat that with the lack of awareness. You probably really feel alone with it. So the power of sharing other people's stories is not medically going to help someone, but that emotional aspect is still so important for a child and the family.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any similarities or any patterns with, other kids that have gone through your experience in regards to their perspective on the world? Is there any or challenges they've gone through even?
I would say it's like 99.9% of us have the same perspective. Like it's like, I'm like, when you have that many people who go through this and then leave the same way, you're like, there's got to be something in that. I went to a summer camp for kids with brain tumors and they sat us down, like 60 of us in a circle, and they were like, who here has experienced bullying after they were diagnosed? And like every single kid raised their hand. And it's like, you wouldn't know that until you were in a room full of kids who had all been through that. And then they all asked and like raised their hand. Like I didn't even know that when I walked into that room, and then seeing everyone raise their hand, and I was like, oh, like that's a big part of it. And then they're like, who here has lost their friends after they were diagnosed? And everyone raised their hand. And it was like, who here was talked to by a social worker about death? And like every single one of them raised their hand. And like, it's, you know, I feel so grateful for the community, but until you are in the community pretty deep, a lot of these experiences feel very isolating and very personal. Like I lost all my friends after I was diagnosed. And of course I was moving to LA, but it still was like a very pivotal moment for me. And I was getting bullied online by people. And I was like, this feels like a me thing. Like I took it very personally. And then when you get in that room and you're like, every single kid had been bullied, you're like, oh, this is a part of that experience. And I think when you can do that and like actually just talk openly about whatever you're going through and realize that there is usually patterns to these things, it makes you feel a lot less alone. But I also think it prepares people for what the experience looks like, because I would have never guessed. Like I was ready for like the movies, or like everyone's like, you have all the friends in the world, and like, yeah, it's a very weird experience until you realize that everyone is kind of experiencing these same like side problems as well.
Yeah, and those are the little parts that no one's ever going to see unless you talk about it, or if you're in it, I guess. When you say bullying, though, what are they bullying? They're just making fun of the experience. What's the bullying aspect?
I think when you're in middle school, especially, something like this is just like talked about a lot. I had a lot of online bullying after I left school. Like people telling me they wish the brain tumor would kill me, and like everything you could imagine. And so it felt very personal to my story, because I think you become kind of an outsider in a way. Like I thought I was an outsider because I was moving to LA, but really it's just any kid that has anything different in a school environment is going to be talked about. And I think a lot of these kids are having problems at school because of like physical ailments, but even kids who didn't have anything, like you go from just like one of the kids in your class to the news story of the day very quickly.
Yes. Yeah, it's one of those things of, okay, do we, we should teach kids about to not bully this and that. You're sure that's a part of it, but there also is that approach of, no, you're going to go, this is what's going to happen. The nature of kids, nature of the world. How do you deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, even the parents were talking about it too. I mean, good or bad, but it becomes a conversation. And I think, there's this like saying in the community, it's like cancer turns strangers into friends and friends into strangers. And like, it seems so... And I think that happens in like a lot of different ways. But yeah, the people you think are going to be there for you, like you never hear from them again.
Yeah, I always thought about that, because they always say you find out who your real people are during tough times, which is true. And sometimes I know I've combated with the cynicism of maybe the world's just fucked, people are assholes, and everyone's evil. But it's also, I think, combined with the idea of, like when you mentioned, no one wants to talk about kids with cancer. It's just sad, it's terrifying, you don't want to face it. So I think I wonder if it's just a balance of just being comfortable. Like some people just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so they choose to run away from it as opposed to stepping up. But it just keeps coming back to the all-encompassing idea of being comfortable to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Because it's the reality. This is what happens. It's reality. Your story's real. It's like, what are you supposed to just kick it to the side because it has nothing to do with me?
Yeah. And I don't blame a lot of people.
No, I do blame them. Talk about it. Come on. What the fuck?
I mean, it's a lot. It's like...
I'm just kidding. But yeah.
If you didn't have to be involved in that, like... I mean, my life is pretty dramatic. It's like she has 6 months to live from an inoperable brain tumor. Like, if you could walk away from that and not deal with it, like...
Yeah, no, I get that angle.
But yeah, no, I think it's... I realized it wasn't personal. And I think that happens in a lot of different things in life,
That's such an important... How old are you?
I'm 23.
Yeah, God bless you. The hell did I know at 23? But that's such an important thing to realize, that, the things that happen externally to us from other people, let alone the experience... It's when you start taking things personally is that when it hurts. And it can be a protective measure, I guess, to have that perspective, but it's kind of just the reality of it as well. It's maybe a silly example, but, as this show's grown, the comment section is just brutal. Like towards me and also towards my guests, sharing stories. And it reminds me of one girl that was talking about surviving cancer, and they were like laughing at cancer.
Yeah.
And at first it took me a while to adjust to like, the attention that the podcast was getting and seeing all these comments. And eventually it was just like, no, this is, I think I said it the other day because people were hitting me hard on one. I literally don't care at this point. I find it's like a social experiment for me, looking at these data points of how people are reacting. And no surprise, all men, but that's a whole other conversation. But the point is like, oh, this person may be saying this about me and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, this is not a personal attack, even though it is a personal attack. I'm like, oh, this person is, I don't know you. You don't know me. You're probably projecting some other things going on. So there is a perfect balance of knowing what to take personally, because some things kind of feel really personal because maybe it was.
Yeah.
But even that, I'm like, oh, no, it's just another person.
It's coming from somewhere. And I think, and that's like one big thing that this whole thing has really taught me, because like walking down the street, I don't look like someone you think has a brain tumor, but for years and years, there's seizures, there's headaches, there's days where I don't get out of bed. And I think it's taught me to be overly empathetic about, things that other people are going through. And what I try to remember is like everyone has their worst day. So like my story is very extreme, but like everyone has their worst day of their life, and you don't know if you're catching them in that, whatever that worst day looks like. And so it's made me very empathetic to like the person who's honking in traffic, or like the person yelling at the grocery store. Like, but yeah, no, I'm trying to like not let that affect me personally, because you realize that like I saw a quote recently and I really want to try to memorize it, but it's very long. But there was this quote that was kind of like, when you listen closely, like every observation is really like a mirror into someone's judgment, or like something like that. But I'm sure it was a really great quote.
No,
but
I get it. I think that's beautiful. It's such and once again, there's the weird trickling gifts of these experiences that we have. And, there's gift after gift of what you're expressing through your story, and these lessons that are so important. It's the story in itself that you're going through is incredibly sad at the same time that you have to go through this, but it's so beautiful. And when you look closer in the reflection, because there's ideas of you don't know what someone's going through is cliche for a reason, and what you're going through is literally hidden. Someone could never see it with just meeting you. And people always say first impressions are so important. To me, for the longest time, like first impressions aren't the most important. If anything, it's like the second and third impression, because that first impression, you don't know what day you got that person. You don't know if they just got stuck in traffic. It could be the littlest thing of a terrible drive just to get where they were, let alone these big traumatic experiences. And I think there's such a level of compassion and understanding and looking at your own life and realizing, are you perfect every day? Like, are you going to have the perfect reaction every time? Just having a little bit more patient. And sometimes it takes these experiences to wake up to these realizations.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but it doesn't suck at the same time.
Yeah. No, I always say, like, as crazy as it sounds, it's like the best thing that ever happened to me.
I love that. I've recently, I got shit for saying something about, what was it? It was, I was just taking the stance of, no, like grief in particular. I was like, no, it can get better. And I specifically said, me personally, I just use words very carefully. I say it will get better. Yeah. But for the lightheartedness of people that are out there, I was like, it can get better. And I was and I specifically focused on the word can. Yeah. Because I was like, if you say it will never get better, okay, it's never going to get better. But if I'm leaving some window of saying, no, I believe it can get better from my own experiences, let alone from all the experiences that I've been willing to have on the podcast and share all these amazing stories of perseverance and growth and yada, yada. But people got so taken back by the idea that of just saying it can. Mm-hmm. And I was harping on the idea it can. I'm not saying it will. Yeah. But I think that those semantics and the words we choose just have such a powerful impact. Yeah. And it was just the way it was responded was so interesting, because I think it goes back to what we were saying about staying stagnant. And if you're staying stagnant with that notion, then you are partially making a decision in yourself of how you choose to see it.
And it's hard to see that when you're in it.
And I tapped into that too. I was like trying to be generous to that too. And I'm not saying it's going to, I wouldn't say that to certain people. If you're in the middle of grief saying it can get better, I'm just like, I'm going to let you feel what you got to feel. Yeah. So there is a balancing act to that. Yeah. I think when I made it's just a very blanket statement on the surface where I had to clarify my meaning behind it. Mm-hmm. But it opened up a whole new interesting perspective of where people are. And again, you have to meet it where you are. Yeah. You have to meet it where you are. It's not a blanket statement for everyone. Yeah. I just choose the idea of it can get better. Mm-hmm. And you explaining it as you just did, like, this is one of the best things that could have happened. Yeah. Even in one of the best things under the worst circumstances.
Yeah. Took the cards that I was dealt and did what I could with them. And, I think I wrote a fiction book recently that was a lot about like injecting this like terminally ill kid perspective on a kid that isn't terminally ill in the book. And there's a character in there that's named Kaizen, and it means 1% better each day. And I really fell in love with this idea that like, okay, I can't be like a totally new person today, but if I wear bright pink, even if I'm worried that people are going to think, why is she wearing like hot pink? That's like 1% closer to like your authentic self. And I think it really is like acknowledging those small steps, especially in grief or going through something like this. You know, what's one thing that I can do to make myself feel a little bit more like myself or a little bit better today? And I think that's how I'm able to look back and say, like, the worst thing that I ever went through has turned into the best thing I've ever gone through. It was like I took the context that's like traditionally perceived with a brain tumor, which is like, that's so horrible, that's so bad, which is what people say to me. And then I like realized I was kind of just like nodding and agreeing with them because I had to, but I had removed this context and replaced it with my own. And then when I thought of it, I thought of community and joy and opportunity, and replaced the context with something that made me feel empowered instead of stuck where I was.
Hell yeah. It's almost like the darkest moments just make the light even brighter. As weird as that sounds, you just got to see it. And sometimes it's in the distance.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little further away, but that glimmer is always there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But if, you know, even if it's 1% glimmer, it's hard to see that 1%. But then back to your 1%, that is important. It's those little steps. It's not these giant jumps.
Yeah.
And I think that's the balancing act where they say time heals. It's not, to me, I've said it a fucking billion times, but it's not, it's kind of what you do at the time. But we always think it has to be one massive jump. And I think it's that day to day.
Yeah. And I think that's where like it comes into like the fun of like, how can I twist this in my mind today? Like when I talk about that book, I'm like, oh, like, what if that pile of trash that you looked at angrily in the book, the kid loses his memories? And I was fascinated by this idea. Like before, when he had his memories, he has this context of like, oh, trash is ugly. And then right after your memories, you can be like, oh, look at a new art project. Or like, ugh, I'm stuck at a red light. Or like, oh my God, I get to play my favorite song one more time. Like it's constantly just this mental like mind gymnastics of like, how can I revamp the context that's been handed to me by past experiences or by other people that I don't even necessarily maybe believe with.
That's amazing. And again, I haven't been on Earth that long to make these realizations that I think.
I feel like I've been here a long time.
You've probably been here before this, to be honest, the way you're handling this. But it is that, you know, people also tend to find looking for the positive within the darkness as a bad thing, which to me, again, I don't, maybe it's because of my past experiences, I've learned to grapple that, but I just personally choose to, and sometimes in a very dark, humorous manner, I look for the positive in there, but it's like, what else are we supposed to do? Unless we get so comfortable. I think there is a being comfortable in the sadness because, in my opinion, staying sad is easier than finding your way out of it.
Yeah.
It takes way more effort.
Yeah. And when people when people come on a podcast and say, be positive and look at the trash as an art project, you're like, oh my God, you're crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd probably be sitting there looking at myself like, shut up. But I think I always say like, you don't have to go out and do good. Like, I think that's like a lot of things. Like people are like, okay, now I have to like volunteer with animals and I have to become a firefighter. It's like, no, I'm not saying do good. I'm saying do something. And like something will lead to something else. And that's like my biggest, thing looking back. People are like, oh, okay, well, how did you get to where you were even in your entertainment career? And I was like, I just did something. I didn't know if it was a good thing or anything. Like it just do something and then it leads to something else. And then all of a sudden you're like 1,000 steps further than you were before. And there's this quote by Carl Sagan that's in my book, and I used it in a recent TED Talk. It was like, if you wish to bake an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. And I thought that was so cool because it was like every single moment had to perfectly align so that I could sit here and be like, oh, let me like scroll on my phone. And it makes you realize that literally every little thing you do will lead to something else, and you don't know what that thing's going to be. Yeah,
it's interesting how now, you're defining it as everything had to perfectly align, but when you're on that process of getting to that perfect alignment, if you will, it's not, it's like an imperfect, perfect alignment.
Yeah.
Because that process to get there, like you said, is doing something for something, and sometimes that something isn't something, but then you keep going, and then when you zoom out, it's like, oh, this took me to here. But when you zoom in, you see all these ups and downs, maybe wrong decisions at the time, this, that, and the other. So it's I love that, doing something. You have to do something.
And that's why I've really come, like, my mom's a yoga teacher. So like back in the day, like she would always be like, nothing's good or bad. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with that? But now I look at it and I'm like, that's like something that you like want so badly. And you're like, oh, I want this. Exactly. Like this would be a good thing. And you look back in 3 years and you're like, thank God that didn't happen like that. And then the bad thing that you're like, oh, this is awful, turns into something incredible a couple of years later.
And that's where a little bit of time, it's the Chinese farmer parable. It's just like, we'll see. It's just, yes, it's bad right now. And I'm not saying when you go, like, especially in the theme of this podcast, when you have these traumatic events or grief, I'm not saying, my dad's death, that's great. It sucks. It's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
But after some time, I realized, oh my God, there's so much good that came from that experience.
Yeah.
And it took time.
Yeah.
It took time for some doors to open up, took some time to see it,
Yeah.
and there's no race to find it. I'm not saying if you're in shit right now to automatically look at the positive. For me now, after what I've gone through personally, whenever something bad happens, I immediately am looking for the good. And I'm not trying to make a profound experience about my life from something shitty, but there are so many little goodies that trickle from these experiences.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it takes going through these experiences to realize it. But that's the power of your story personally, is we can pull from other people's stories without having to have had the experience.
Yeah. And I think that's where like my mom's advice comes in again, is like, you can be sad, but not for too long. And I think you can't skip step one. Like, you do have to be sad for a
Yes.
second. I think now I'm probably, and I'm sure maybe you're the similar way. I'm like, I think sometimes I try to jump too fast out
Yes.
of that. But I think that system of like, okay, sad for like maybe 25% and then jump into the next phase. And I think you learn to be resilient. And I've learned so much resilience from what I went through that everything else, you know, even when it's difficult, it's like a reference point. Like, I know I can get through it.
Yeah, I wonder if some people, I find myself doing the same things, like we're waiting for the sadness to go away before we can take action, when I think we have to take action while we're sad.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing too. It's like whether you believe it's going to go away or not, I think it does get lighter.
Yeah.
Even if that sadness is a perpetual continuum, it's like it does get lighter. And yeah, it's part of that whole thing. People say you learn to live with it. You live with the grief 100%, but there is a bit of a more of a positive outlook. And at some point, whether that 25% sadness and your time limit's up, it's like we have to do something.
You have to. And I think that's replaceable with a lot of emotions. Like, you have to do it you have to act while you're still in the fear, and you have to act while you're still in the sadness, and you have to act while you're like, I think you just have to be in it sometimes. I think that's like the human experience. Unfortunately, like, there's a lot of things that are not, you don't get to tie things with a perfect bow and then move on from them.
No, and even if you do tie that bow, something's going to unravel it. You got to tie it again. That's just part. I think it's a perfect balance to me. I was raised with tough love. I always say my mom is like a Pop-Tart. She's, hard on the outside but gooey on the inside. I think a little bit of balance of that, where whenever something happens in my life, there's a bit of a warrior in me that I feel like I'm like, all right, game on. Like it's a perfect balance again of. Sometimes you got to be full warrior and put the shit to the side. And then when you come back, take your helmet off. Okay, I can feel it a little bit now. So I think it's a little bit of a back and forth. Sometimes it's simultaneous, but I think it's a little bit of a light switch. To me, at least, that's how I get through. It's like, all right, this is just another life event. I'm gonna have to push through it. This is how it goes. I think to me, it's been an understanding of what life is. Like nothing. Everyone thinks life's unfair, and part of me thinks, yeah, maybe life is unfair, but I feel like it's unfair for everyone. Yeah. So that kind of makes life fair by being totally unfair. Yeah. And it's like, oh, this is just the ride we're on. This is the roller coaster of life. It's going to be up, it's going to be down, it's going to be backwards. Yeah. And I sometimes got to lift my shield up and fight. Yeah. I don't know how else to say it. Yeah. And I always say, like, that moment, those downs, I think is such an incredible opportunity. Like, when you're at ground, like the day before I was diagnosed, it was like, okay, I have to be at dance class, and then I have to be at figure skating for 8 hours, and then I have this science test, and I'm staying up all night crying about it. Like, it was like everything was so scheduled and so specific. And then the next day, none of that mattered all of a sudden. And I think when you're in that kind of ground zero where some life event has happened to you, there's a really incredible opportunity to be in that silence for a second and like actually think about how you want to rebuild your life. Because like a lot of people don't get that chance to start over. They get in this pattern and then they're kind of in it forever. And I think when you're in grief, a lot of those things that mattered or filled your brain or filled your time aren't there anymore. And I think that's where I truly became who I was. Like, I started thinking about the things that I wanted to do with my life and things that I could build back in that were my passion and were what I wanted to be doing every single day. And I just think it's such an incredible opportunity. I know that sounds probably terrible when you're in it, but I really do think getting to know yourself in that time and what you want for your own life, it's like you have a chance that a lot of people don't have. Absolutely. These difficult experiences to me are always a reset. Yeah. And it's whether you get woo or not, it's just a reset to collect yourself to get through the experience, but also a reset of the rest of your life. Yeah. And it's a new beginning that people didn't ask for sometimes, a new beginning that they still wouldn't choose. Yeah. But again, like you said, it's the cards we were dealt. Yep. And we can either just fold every hand or we can like, all right, let's play with it. Yeah. And it's like just like poker. It's like, only you see your cards. And sometimes you got to bluff a little bit. Sometimes you got to just fake it till you make it, till you see the rest of the cards that come out. But That's just what it is.
Yeah.
I hate saying it is what it is. Sometimes it is what it is. With whatever's happening to you, that is what it is.
Yeah.
But everything, your response to after that is what it is what you want it to be.
Yeah.
In many ways. And
Yeah.
I think we feel like we have no control on so many things, but whatever's here internally, there is that control.
Yeah.
It's our perspective that is a controllable aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's not just like, this is terrible, boom, everything's great. It's a process to get there. It's a process.
And I think, not to quote myself, when I was 15.
Quote yourself, let's do it.
Like, that TED Talk I gave when I was 15, like I went up there with this little circle graphic and it had like an arrow that went both ways. And on one side was events and on the other side was decisions. And I was like, I didn't have the choice when this event happened to me, but then the decisions that came after that were completely up to me. And then those decisions led to more events that were maybe up to me or not. And then it would lead to decisions again. And then it created this full circle that ends up being the human experience. And I now like live by that so much. And I don't know how I came up with that when I was so young. I was like, no one heard my talk before I went up there. My mom wasn't even allowed to see it. But I think that to me is like so true. Like the events are not up to us, but the decisions after can really shape what the event is after the one that we're currently facing.
Yeah, I know a lot of people get stuck on the event.
Yeah.
Which understandably, it's a pretty big event, whatever it is you're going through, whoever's listening. But at the same time, the only thing we can't control is how we respond to it.
Yeah.
And it's okay to react once in a while. Like reactions are natural and we're emotional, weird little alien creatures. React once in a while, but even how do you respond to the reaction? And all of a sudden, I feel like it's a process to pay attention to how we react because that's the natural reaction. But then all of a sudden, with enough work and effort, that reaction just becomes a response.
Yeah, that's great. Because like still to me, there's still hard days. Like, I'm constantly speaking with families. Like there's thousands of families that are in the fight right now, and families are having their kids, they're passing away every single week. And I'm constantly talking to parents who have just lost their child. And I think that's like the biggest thing is you don't know when there's going to be a hard day. And then it's training the response to that, kind of feeling that isn't necessarily controllable always. And how do you want to use it? Like, is that going to cause you to shut down, or is it going to cause you to have enough fuel to go do what you need to do? And that's been like a big thing for me with the loss of my friends is like, how can I turn this into fuel instead of, something that holds me back?
100%. I think it's kind of like you were explaining with the bullying to understand this is how it goes. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the understanding of there are tough days ahead of us.
Yeah.
And it might hit you out of nowhere. You might be on a run for a couple of weeks and all of a sudden you have a bad day, and it shouldn't be looked at as, oh no, I'm regressing. I had a bad day. Now my whole streak's over. Now all my work is nothing. Saying, no, the work is continuing through those tough days that are going to come. You're going to have those moments where the grief sticks up to you, or in your case, what you're going through. It's like understanding, oh no, those days are going to come. And with that understanding, that acceptance, you're kind of preparing for those days, not looking for those days, but understanding it's going to happen. And that's okay too. It's not a perfect process. Happiness isn't a constant to me. It's that peace that I think can be constant throughout the turmoil. But even when those days are inevitably going to come, it's okay, what do we do with it?
Yeah.
Wild. What else you got going on?
Oh, gosh.
Everything good?
Yeah.
Anything else you feel like you want to get off your chest that you haven't said already?
Oh, my. There's like a million things. I don't know. I think it's like I said, it's just like an interesting place to be at, ground zero. And I think my 10 years has been very interesting for me too. And just trying to process everything that I'm going through and everything that I went through. And I think something that really came up for me is like, I think talking about the cards that we were dealt, like when I was diagnosed, from that moment on, I was making decisions from a very young age. Like, okay, I'm going to move to LA and work in entertainment. Okay, I'm in LA. Like now I'm on television. Okay, what am I going to do now? And like I was constantly making decisions out of this like very deep, dark, sometimes sad place, but also really exciting place. And looking back now at 10 years and reflecting, I'm like, okay, I literally would not change a single thing that I did from that day I was diagnosed. And I feel incredibly proud of that and incredibly grateful that I can say that out loud. But then in the back of my head, as the 10 years approached, I realized I do still want to have space for mourning the life that I didn't get to live. And that was something that I think those two things can coexist at the same time. Like, I'm like, oh, how fun would it be just to have like gone to college and just be in a sorority? And like my biggest worry was like the fundraiser coming up. I'm like, how fun does that sound? And then people are like, oh, we can go to college now. I'm like, no. That's not like, I don't want to do that now in the life that I'm currently in. But having the acknowledgement, like acknowledging that I could still have had that life, I think has been really important for me too. Like I said, mourning the life that I didn't get to live, but then also acknowledging that with what I went through, I wouldn't have changed a single thing that I did after it.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that's been like a big, those two things coexisting at the same time. Because now I'm constantly, for the rest of my life, will be making decisions within this new life that I'm experiencing post this one day.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. It's like, it's like the conductor on the train of life you're going for. Just pull the lever and now it's transferring to go right instead of the track you thought you were going to be on.
Yeah.
And it's much easier once, especially 10 years down the road in your experience or anyone that's gone through something. It's so interesting how, we might be on one path, we might have an idea where it's going to go, but still don't know. But then when you look back at the other life, the trajectory you might have been on before X happened, it's like, then it's so easy to see that life. It's like, oh, my whole life would have been so different. I would have been doing this. I would have been doing that with that person. And yeah, you are mourning a life that never happened.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different level of grief besides the biological potential death.
Yeah.
There's so many layers to it. Life it's so complicated because there's just so many layers to life, let alone the experiences we go through. But I think it comes back to just that, like, I think we could still simplify it. And I think it comes down to that perspective and just how we see things. And we could kind of simplify it. Like, yeah, I could still mourn that life, but you still choose this life. That's the wild part.
Yeah, I'd always choose this life. And I think, like I said, I wouldn't change a single thing that I did since that day. And I think that to me is so complex, like you said, and there's so many layers to it. And I think you can do that too. Like when you go through, I always say, like a death or a family divorce or anything like that, like you make different decisions from that day on, but you can still be sad about the life that didn't happen. And I think you have to have room for both sides of that.
Yeah, then there's the challenge of making sure you're not looking at it as, oh, this happened to me, why me? Those questions it's the process you got to, which is the process you got to go through too.
Yeah.
But it's, when you're further down the line, it's much easier to talk like I'm talking.
Yeah, and it's much easier for me to talk about it too because I didn't die. And I think that's like a whole, I work with families every day that have lost their children, and I understand and acknowledge that I'm in a very, lucky place to be able to sit here and be like, this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. It's like, I'm sure a lot of parents are not sitting there thinking that. But even the parents that don't agree with me, obviously, they leave with that kind of same perspective and outlook on life, which I think the fact that everyone's kind of gone through this, has left with it the same thing, I think is very special and proves something in some way.
Yeah, and it's important to look at someone like your story, to that 10-year difference between someone who might be in it now, just starting that journey to get to 10 years, if you will. It is a little bit of a glimpse in the future, regardless of where it goes. Like, okay, look where she's at. I may not agree with it now. I may not see it at all because I'm not there yet. But it's like you're just like a statue of hope in a way that, oh, this is someone that's further down the line of where I want to be. And that's where the inspiration comes. And I think, we didn't go too woo-woo on this episode, but if there was a reason why, you're still doing what you're doing, it's because you're doing what you're doing. And, it's a beacon in many ways. And it's amazing for someone who's 23. You've gone through so much. It's impressive. My stomach's talking because I haven't eaten all day. I already disclosed that before the episode with you. But I just want to thank you for doing what you're doing. You have a long way to go. And it's impressive what you've done. I appreciate you sharing your story. And as usual, for anyone listening, I'm going to anything or your book or whatever you got going on or any activism, if you will, I'll plug that in the show notes. But again, if there's anything else you want to say before we check out, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. This is so fun. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we talked a lot to people who are in kind of any phase of life, going through anything. I think, like I said, it's just like, what's that one thing I can wake up and do tomorrow to make me a little bit more myself? And I think then when you look back, you're like, oh, 100 days ago, I wasn't me and now I am. And I think you can constantly redo that cycle. We constantly have to check in because then we live within like the construct of society. And it's like, okay, well, I do still have to go to work. So, whatever. But yeah, I think constantly doing that cycle of, okay, 1% more me tomorrow. And then the day after that, and then checking in with yourself. I think you learn a lot.
100%. So I think this experience for me about everything that I've gone through personally, is like the importance of being present, but also sometimes you got to time travel a little bit to look back at where you were. Then compare it to where you are now, and then consider that yourself in the future. What I understand that I'm going to be different in X amount of days. We change every day. Every one day I want pizza, the other day I want pasta. It just changes. Yeah. And it's sometimes important to consider to look at the unknown and understand that anything's possible with that unknown, and not limit yourself to one thing or the other. And I'll stop talking. So anyway, guys, thank you for being here, Grace. I appreciate you. You're amazing. And again, click the show notes, check her out and everything she's doing. It's pretty friggin' awesome. If you like this episode, go find her. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.